on my laptop.
I just have the chat open, and I think it's chat says we're good. So I'll get us going. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Fantasy Inferno. I am one of the dynamic quad of guys that you're going to see tonight, joined by some dashing gentlemen and a picture. We got Rob Silvers, we got Rob Sullivan, and the Bryce Fraser, who is here in voice only. How are we doing tonight, gentlemen?
Great.
Well, how are you?
I am perplexed. I feel like we might not make it through an entire NFL season. Everybody will be at IR by the midpoint, but we'll see what happens. So we've got an interesting show tonight. We've got a lot of notes, a lot of news, a lot of what the heck is going to happen, and we're going to try to help you guys figure that out tonight. I know we've been pumping out videos on the random guys that are showing up on teams' rosters as player outlooks. But we figured tonight we would kind of try to talk through that. So we're watching the chats. If you guys have questions, fire them away. We do also have our start-sit videos out here on YouTube. Post your questions in there. We'll get those answered by Friday, so we can hopefully see the injury reports and know who's going to be available this weekend to play. But Mr. Sullivan, how about you get us started here on some of these news and notes?
Yeah, man, I don't even know where to start, but I guess we'll start with the most I'll call it devastating of the injuries from week 2. So we lost Saquon Barkley for the season to a torn ACL. The Giants then, with Wayne Gallman inactive, ran Dion Lewis with every carry for the rest of the game, and he did nothing, but he was somewhat productive in the passing game. So Wayne Gallman, like I said, is there. They've added Devante Freeman off the street. Somehow thought he was worth $3 million. That's a whole other story. So I guess we'll start in New York. And if you're the Saquon Barkley owner, what are you doing to weather this storm or just try to survive? Start with you, Mr. Silvers.
Yeah. Well, from a redraft perspective, at least, there's enough guys available on free agency this week, on the waivers this week. So I went out, I hit the waivers. Pretty solid. Also tried to find guys who were looking to trade away a running back, guys who weren't tagged. So I picked up a couple shares of Freeman in some leagues. I picked up a couple shares of Mike Davis to tie me over for a few weeks while I look for trade partners. And I've so far been able to land one good trade and getting rid of Stephon Diggs for Austin Eckler. So, so it's with each kind of situation, it's trying to find what's best, and you got to kind of just feel out each of the other owners in your league and see what you can do, see what you can work out. But for sure, with the number of injuries that happened this week, there's should be enough guys on the waiver wire to tie you over for a couple of weeks where you don't have to push through a bad trade this week, and you can kind of wait to find something that doesn't really give you a hole somewhere else to try and plug up running back.
Cool. So, Bryce, who are you prioritizing off the waiver wire if you need a running back this week?
So it depends on who you had that got hurt. But since you said Barkley, I think you have to prioritize Devante Freeman because everybody else might not be long-term. So you at least got a starter somewhere because, losing your first pick, obviously you had to be pick 1 or 2, maybe 3, and you took Barkley. And that's a punch to the gut to lose your first-round pick for the entire season. So you got to find his replacement. That way, you got a starter for the rest of the year. So you got to take Freeman. But I would definitely be looking to trade. And I think Silvers hit it perfectly where he said, "Don't take a bad trade because you're desperate. Settle down for a minute. Hopefully, you're not 0-2 at this point, or you might be a little desperate. But if you got maybe one win under your belt, or if you're lucky and you're 2-0, even though Barkley's performances the first 2 weeks were terrible." Try and find, the best trade for you. That way you're going to have to downgrade somewhere, whether it's quarterback, wide receiver, or tight end, to add some depth to your running back area. So to answer your question, Sully, I think you got to go Freeman if you're the Barkley owner.
Cool. Mr. Menendez, solve this riddle for me, brother.
I'm extremely troubled by what's happening. Like, I don't know how to handle it because You mentioned Fish earlier. I'm just broken and battered at running back, and I just haven't been able to find anything that works for me. You can't make trades in there, so it's like I'm trying to roll out, but I'm the guy who also has Kittle, so I've got injuries along there as well as Kittle. So I went with the 2 tight ends when in the Fish draft, so it's like, and now I'm trying to roll with, Kelsey and Austin Hooper or whatever scrap heap tight end I can find. It's such a weird dynamic right now. I mean, Devante Freeman wasn't really very good when we saw him last year, so I hate to see him behind that crappy line. If Saquon couldn't be successful, Devante Freeman's not going to be successful. It's like, where's the victory there? So I think Silvers probably has the best idea. Try to find a solid trade that doesn't button hook you. I would go look for something like maybe one of the Detroit owners that has DeAndre Swift is unhappy. At least he's getting PPR action. Obviously, you can't expect touchdowns from him unless he's running the ball because he can't catch it in the end zone, and that sucks.
I would build off that. Another guy I think to target, again, like if you're trying to tie yourself over for a few weeks, if you're able to go out and get like that Mike Davis who might have that 4 to 6 week window starting for you, a good trade target I feel like is J.K. Dobbins as well, because in 4 to 6 weeks he might have control of that backfield. Now, week 1 he had the goal line work. Week 2 he was on the field for the most snaps or second most snaps, I believe, of any running back in week 2 for the Ravens. He only touched the ball twice, but one of them was a 43-yard run. He's going to continue to get the opportunities, and at some point I feel like he's going to take over that backfield this year. So if you can get 4 solid weeks of Mike Davis giving you at least flex play stuff to keep you in games, maybe help you pick up a couple of wins, and then you were able to make a trade for J.K. Dobbins, and then he starts picking up that load at that point. I think that's good. And just the alternate kind of waiver wire target is the guy kind of left in San Francisco, which I'm sure we'll get to. But Jerick McKinnon has looked really good in limited touches as well. And he seems to be the only guy left healthy there.
Yeah, I'll get to San Francisco. I have a fun little story about that disaster. So that's Saquon Barkley. We also, unfortunately, lost Cortland Sutton for the season. Devastating. I know Brad's a big Cortland Sutton fan. I actually, fun fact, have a team that has Marlon Mack, Cortland Sutton, Saquon Barkley, and Raheem Mostert on it. So I love that team. Anyhow, so Cortland Sutton went down for the year. So at the same time, they lost their starting quarterback, Drew Lock, who looks like they came out today and said they think he's going to be back within 3 weeks, so they didn't put him on IR. I don't think that's even remotely a possibility. So what do we see happening in the Denver offense now with their number 1 wide receiver on the shelf and their number 1 quarterback on the shelf as well? And arguably their best running back is also on the shelf in Phillip Lindsay. Brad, I'll start with you.
I was pleasantly surprised. Jeff Driscoll looked fine. I mean, he didn't look any worse than Locke's looked so far. So I think they can still sustain. I think Noah Fant will kind of be a really sexy pickup or a guy you can trust more because I'm sure he's been drafted. I don't know why I said pickup, but a guy you could target because he's already played well the first few weeks, and I think Driscoll will continue to look his way because he's the most trustworthy option. Obviously, we saw Melvin Gordon get a heavy workload, so those are probably the 2 fantasy guys that I think will have relevance out of it. I mean, with as many injuries as we've seen, I'd even throw a flyer at Royce Freeman because we know Melvin Gordon's not the most healthy guy. So, if you're a guy who's hurting for running back like me in our Fish League, I'm trying to get Royce Freeman just because I'm literally trotting out Austin Eckler, and that's my only running back. So, I'm like, well, maybe he gets hurt, and I can start him for a few weeks, and he can get me some production. That's probably the 2 guys that I really care about, though, are Fant and Gordon, at least at this point. What do you think, Bryce?
Yeah, it's kind of sucks, because I thought the Broncos would be a sneaky, fun team to watch this year. With their receiving core all the way down to their tight ends, and then their best running back, Phillip Lindsay. He is their best running back. Getting hurt, it's sad to see, but like Brad said, the only part in that team that I want is Noah Fant. And after watching him the first 2 weeks, like he is so close to stepping into that elite tier tight end talk. So yeah, I got to see more from Jerry Judy because he's going to be the go-to guy. But Hamler saw the field, I think, for the first time as well, and he was targeted quite a few times as well. So there's a lot of guys you got to kind of keep your eye on. But if you're in a situation where injuries hurt you and you got to make a trade, and maybe the opposite guy has those guys that he's not valuing high, maybe you can get them in there for cheap. So definitely a lot of people to keep your eye on the team. But I think Brad pointed out the most obvious ones, and I'd have to agree with him. What about you, Silvers?
Yeah, I think Noah Fant obviously is the lead beneficiary of the Sutton injury. I think he's the most established receiving threat on that team now. I'm not, and then I would go for Jerry Judy from a pass catching standpoint. KJ Droppler, as I like to name him. He might get a lot of targets, but he's going to drop the ball a lot. Well, I mean, when you drop 12 out of 56 targets your last year at college, I don't know. Unless they got improved stickum out there in Denver.
Got good gloves. I don't know. They got good gloves.
Yeah. But no, I'm disappointed because I was kind of touting Denver all offseason. I thought they had a great chance to step forward as a top offense into this league with Drew Lock progressing forward and Sutton flashing last year, and thought he was going to be a top 10 wide receiver possibly here this year. And like the other pieces around there, I think Noah Fant's a top 5, even top 3 potential tight end. So for them to get hit so hard over the last week, that's kind of disappointing. But hopefully they'll all come back stronger. And it hurts us here in redraft, but it's guys to definitely file away and remember for next season, because they're probably going to be steals in some redraft leagues because they're not going to have played all year.
I picked up a bunch of Tim Patrick today off of waivers. He's a serviceable guy last year. I still have a little bit of hope for the Broncos, and with Shermer there running that offense, and I just reference his Vikings days. It's a guy who got career years out of Sam Bradford and Case Keenum. So Jeff Driscoll is okay, to Brad's point. Bounce Judy on the outside and have him take some shots at him deep like he did with Galladay in Detroit last year and had some success. Hamler can sort of play that slot Thielen Diggs sort of role. Hopefully he can catch on to the football. So I think they'll be okay. But Denver also had a pretty big injury on the defensive side of the football. They've been beat up pretty bad. And they're in a division with some pretty good football teams. So probably not so good for them. So we also had Christian McCaffrey. So we lost the top 2 running backs on the weekend. CMC's been put on IR, out 4 to 6 weeks. Ooh, I know we talked about Mike Davis. Does Reggie Bonifant have any life? How about Trenton Cannon? Is there any life in that backfield, or is it just Mike Davis and a hope and a prayer?
I think Mike Davis is the surest bet to get the carries. But it wouldn't surprise me at all if the leading rusher in 3 weeks, through the next 3 weeks, is Curtis Samuel. I'm trying to think. Did he carry the ball 12 times? Did I see on Sunday? Was that right? In relief of McCaffrey. So I mean, and Matt Rule was talking about him, that he sees him as a guy who's possibly playing running back here moving forward. So yeah, I feel like Mike Davis would be the natural choice, but a lot of me is going to start gambling if there's any shares of Curtis Samuel out there on him, because I feel like the upside is that much higher given his athletic profile.
His athletic profile, but his build scares the hell out of me. He's going to get killed.
Yeah, but it's like a Ty Montgomery.
Well, but
how's he doing for health?
Yeah, not great, but for one season it was perfect.
Brad, what do you got?
I'm just, so depending on how they spread this thing out, trying to think of it, because what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to slot him in a wide receiver position. So depending on how many carries he gets, I'd just be interested to see if anyone does any of the statistical breakdown of where does that slot in, and is he a wide receiver 3 if he's getting 7 to 12 carries a game or something. I mean that's where I struggle with. Okay, if he gets carries, that's great because it's still fantasy production. I just don't know where the return on the investment is there. So if you can get him and he's their kind of the guy they trust, sure. I mean, at this point, I think you just need to throw a chip on a guy and see what happens. Trenton Cannon was a guy that was drafted decently when he came out, and there was a little bit of hype about him. So I wouldn't be surprised if he gets an opportunity. Mike Davis has bounced around the league his entire career, and he's been okay. I mean, he's serviceable, but I mean, at this point, you just throw a chip out and see what happens. And if you suck, then drop him and grab somebody else. And what about you, Bryce?
Bryce, before you go here, I misspoke. It wasn't 12 carries that he had. I got his yards and his carries crossed up. So he had 13 receiving yards. He had 4 rushes, 26 yards, 5 rushes through 2 weeks, 31 yards. So he's averaging 6 yards a carry right now, is Curtis Samuel. And I'm not sure what style of runs those are either.
Probably jet sweeps, most of them.
Yeah.
So nobody drafted Christian McCaffrey for his rushing productivity. We all like to see him in the PPR. That's where he gets all his 75% of his value. It seems like comes from him in the pass game, right? So because he's got to carry the ball 25 times to even get close to cracking 100 yards with that team. So when Christian McCaffrey got hurt, I was watching that game a lot. Mike Davis looked like a decent pass catching back. I know a lot of people say he's not known for that, but when they were throwing him little bubble passes and quick screens out of the backfield, he looked quick. He looked like he turned upfield fast, and he looked natural catching the ball. So I'm going to hop all over him because that team is going to be losing a lot of their games, or they're going to be in a lot of shootouts because their defense is terrible. Their offense is not that bad. Teddy Bridgewater's not terrible. The receiving core is very good with the addition of Robbie Anderson. Yeah, I'm jumping all over Mike Davis. There's not really any other players that I'm going to be looking at. I think Curtis Samuel could see a little bit more carries, but I think it's going to be all out of the jet sweep kind of formation where he's in the slot and he gets a little motion to the ball to him. So he might get a little bit more value in that sense, but I'm looking all over Mike Davis.
Yeah, he was targeted 8 times and he caught all 8. So
yeah,
he's doing something right there. What else do we have for Carnage? So let's talk San Francisco 49ers. So this one's kind of fun. So Friday they are leaving San Francisco, heading out to New York, and somebody crashes into their plane. So their plane gets derailed, for lack of a better term. They get a new plane. They fly out there. Same week that they've scratched Kittle, put Richard Sherman on IR. They play the first half against the Jets in Meadowlands, and they lose their quarterback, apparently 2 running backs, 2 significant pieces off of their defensive line. And here we are. So we have Nick Mullins. We have Jerick McKinnon, who did kind of flash and look good, mainly on one big play, but looks okay over the last couple of weeks. Jeffrey Wilson is there. Refresh my memory. Who's the kid on the practice roster that they're probably going to call up? Hasty?
Oh, yeah, JaMychal Hasty.
And then there's, and I didn't even talk about their situation at wide receiver. The 49ers were very upset with the field conditions. And as a bonus for San Francisco, for all of that, they get to play in the exact same stadium again this week against the Giants. How's that for a week?
That's just
crazy.
So Garoppolo might go. I don't think he will. Mullins, I think, is okay. He had his 15 minutes of fame on that Monday night start, and he was lights out, and he was very pedestrian after that. I like Jerick McKinnon. Jeff Wilson was very productive in the limited goal line stuff that he had in the past. I don't know if Kittle comes back, but the ghost of Jordan Reed looked pretty good on the weekend. So if you're a Mostert, Coleman, Kittle, Garoppolo owner, what are we doing with all that mess in San Francisco, Brad?
Man, this is, I mean, So McKinnon was the guy that liked, and they signed and paid a bunch of money to, and injuries were really the issue for him. So it's like, if he's
Yeah.
healthy, he should be the guy. I don't think he's ever really been healthy for a long period of time, though. So, I mean, you go with McKinnon because he's healthy. You make sure you have Jeffrey Wilson kind of in the back of your mind because he's probably going to get some action if Mostert doesn't come back anytime soon or Coleman. And I mean, you just kind of have you have to be flexible. Like if you bought in to Mostert, you just now have to kind of try to figure out how to make sure you've got the guy. Which is probably why I stayed clear of this backfield. I don't think I own any 49ers anywhere. I didn't trust Garoppolo passing. I think I like Nick Mullins at quarterback better than Garoppolo. Just from the fact that he's willing to just drop and go. It's just such a weird. I feel so bad for him because they go from Super Bowl to super hurt, and it's like, man, poor guys. So what about you, Silvers? What do you think about this whole situation?
Yeah, I agree. It's throw it in a blender and see what comes out at this point. I don't know what they got. I spoke a little bit about McKinnon earlier, and I do believe he's going to flash some big plays, but he's not going to be the volume guy, and so that makes sense to your point to grab Jeff Wilson or look at Jeff Wilson, consider Jeff Wilson. But also the Jermichael Hasty is interesting to me. I know he was a guy got a lot of good reviews in camp. Obviously, they have a lot of running backs, so he was destined for the practice squad no matter what, I think. Or I mean, unless he came out and was the second coming of Barry Sanders, right away. But he's probably going to get some touches too. I mean, Shanahan likes to spread it around, give everybody touches out there. They like to do that. So, and I think none of them are start. I don't know if any of them are really start worthy and feel comfortable about it, but they're all going to get chances to do something, and maybe somebody kind of takes over for a while, but that's a tough situation. And as far as the receivers, I'm like you, Brad, in that sense. I completely stayed away there as well. I think I own one share of Kittle, and that's it. I don't have Debo or Ayuk anywhere, dynasty or redraft. They just, I don't trust Jimmy Garoppolo, didn't. And to your point, Nick Mullins might be an upgrade.
Bryce, how do you decipher the San Francisco 49ers conundrum?
So in redraft, I had a lot of shares of Raheem Mostert, and after week 1 and half of week 2, I was extremely ecstatic that I got him where I did. Yeah, I knew he has that big playability, and one thing, even though it seems like their whole team got hurt, their offensive line is still intact. So I still want a piece of that backfield. So obviously, I looked for a lot of shares to get a lot of shares of Jerick McKinnon off the waiver wire, and in most of the leagues, I think I got him. So I do like Jerick McKinnon, and the coach likes him too, and that's another big thing. So they kept him on the roster for however long he was hurt. He's got one heck of a story to tell, and you know how teams get momentum and things like that from situations from guys like that. So they have an easy matchup this week, so I would not be surprised to see Garoppolo and George Kittle sit, even if they're healthy, just to get another week under the belt of complete health. They don't have they're playing the Giants, who obviously now just lost their best player. So I wouldn't be surprised to see the 49ers just run it 35 to 40 times in this game and Jerick McKinnon get a lot of touches, whether it's on the ground or in the air. So that's the only guy I'm looking to add off this team, or even looking to start this next week. Unless George Kittle is healthy, you have to start him.
Gotcha. So we also had guys like Julio Jones sort of kind of play and kind of not play due to injury. Devontae Adams left early with injury. Gosh, I know there was a lot more. I just can't recall. There was a ton of significant defensive injuries that I'm sure Brad's a little bit more in tune with than I am. And it's, I look at the Giants and playing San Francisco, and they are all beat up. Sterling Shepard, that's another guy who got put on IR. The longer I talk, the things just come back to me. Yeah. But So, like, when you're looking at the Giants, just use them for an example, right? So, the Saquon's gone. It's probably, I would guess, Gallman and Lewis. I don't know if Freeman can play this week. Evan Ingram, Golden Tate, and Darius Slayton. They probably have a pretty good matchup now with D Ford still hurt there. That's another guy that's hurt. Solomon Thomas is gone for the year. Bosa's gone for the year. So how do you attack the Giants if you own pieces of their receiving core? Who are you starting against the Niners? Are you firing them all up?
I think you have to, right? I mean,
Yeah.
Daniel Jones is not bad. I know that last week against Chicago was rough at times, but Slayton is a must. I think Ingram's a must. I mean, whoever the receiving running back is, if it's Deion Lewis, it's probably safe play. I mean, Golden Tate with Shepard on IR should get more action, but he's still really not going to be much more than short to intermediary passing. He could get a ton of catches. I mean, he could have like 8-9 catches, maybe 10 to 12 targets, but that's still only going to get you like 50, 60 yards with Golden Tate. But
yeah, he was good when Shepard was out late last year, but I really question if Tate has anything left in the tank, to be totally honest.
not much.
Bryce, what are you doing if you're a Giants owner?
There's not much other than what Brad said. I think you got to look and see who's going to be active if Freeman's not. I don't care if Freeman's active or not. I don't think he plays a big role in week 1 anyway, so I like Deion Lewis. And I do like Slayton and Ingram. Slayton is starting to be like one of those guys that you almost have to start week in and week out if he keeps producing. And Evan Ingram's got the talent. I just feel like he's so close to putting it all together. He has some stupid mistakes sometimes in games. He drops balls here and there. So, yeah, the 49ers are so beat up that, they could go from, Super Bowl contenders last year to one of the worst teams this year and get a top pick and come right back the season after. So, I'm going to start all the guys that Brad mentioned. Silvers, what about you?
Yeah, I'm down for taking a shot on him. The backfield I'm going to let play out, see what happens with Freeman. But those wide receivers for sure giving him a shot. Hopefully, Evan Ingram figures out why he can't catch the football now, and starts doing something here.
He'll be fine. Him and KJ Hamler will have a workshop. They'll be good. They'll figure it out. So some good news. Kenny Galladay looks like he's coming back. Chris Godwin's coming back. I don't know who else is coming back, but that's good news. We're getting those two guys back.
Yeah, I mean, with Michael Thomas's injuries, you need some wide receiver one. I mean, Galladay, I think it was in Discord, somebody asked about Galladay and should they start him. I would, because he hasn't practiced and hasn't gotten any live game reps, I'd be cautious about starting Galladay this weekend. I would want to see what they do because Detroit tends to be a team that eases guys back in. They don't tend to just throw people back in, and especially going out to Arizona. I mean, they're not going to win anyway, so I would think they would put him on a pitch count. So I wouldn't be looking at a crazy high amount of catches for him. But Silvers, what do you think about Galladay, and would you be starting him this weekend?
I mean, start your studs, right? I mean, he's got to – I think you got to. If you have Galladay, you're probably hurting if you haven't had him because he was probably your top wide receiver. And at this point, you're 1-1, you're 1-2, or you're 0-2. You don't want to be 1-2. If you're already got to win, you don't want to be 0-3. So you're going to take that gamble, I think, and you're going to play him. I'm going to play him where I've got him.
What about you, Bryce?
Bryce?
Yeah, 100%. You got, like you said, you got to start your studs. So I'm going to start Kenny Galladay if he's active. I feel like if he is active, can't believe you're not being more optimistic, Brad. You just think they're just going to go there and roll over. Sounds like poor Lions fans. But the Lions are a weird team. Like they'll get beat by teams they should beat, and then they'll compete real well with teams that they should get dominated by sometimes, though. So I wouldn't be surprised if that game's closer than you think.
If it ends in a tie, I'm not coming back.
half that division's
There's a
already
lot of
in
good
the
games this week.
playoffs.
There's a lot of good teams playing good teams and a lot of bad teams playing other bad teams. So it should be an
That's every
interesting
week, though, isn't it?
No, last week had a lot of good teams playing bad teams, I feel
That's
like.
true.
So
Trying to think of other injury reports this week. So DJ Shark just popped up on the injury report today. So that game's tomorrow night. Why don't we talk about the Dolphins and the Jags? What are we thinking there on both sides of the ball? I think, Brad, Miami's got some defensive injuries, correct? Is Byron Jones still out?
Yeah, they keep him. I think he's going to be out this week. I know he's been limited. I think tomorrow night's game will be fun from a fantasy perspective. I think there's going to be a significant amount of fantasy points going around. So DJ Shark is questionable.
Are you starting everybody?
People that have been asking me, I've been telling them I would be comfortable starting Preston Williams. Even in the chat, we just had someone say, "Who are you starting, Chenault or Preston Williams?" I'm okay with both. I mean, Chenault, they keep involving in the offense. Miami's defense is developing, so Chenault's going to continue to get targeted, but Preston Williams is probably their top, their best receiver. I know Devontae Parker tends to get some play and it gets a lot of love from Fitzpatrick, but he's hurt, so Preston Williams could get more action out of the deal. I'm comfortable starting most of their guys. Myles Gaskins is where I start to go, if I'm the guy that's got a bunch of injuries at running back, I'd start Gaskin, obviously, because he should still get some receptions. James Robinson, obviously, is a must start. He's been rolling with them. What do you think, Silvers?
Yeah, I think I'm starting everybody there. I don't think either defense is all that special, so I think it's going to be to your point, a pretty good game fantasy wise. James Robinson seems to really be taking hold. The pass catchers on both sides are doing enough work. Minshew mania appears to be in full force. I mean, it just seems fun. The only question I have, or the only concern I have, and it's always going to be a concern, is when does Fitzmagic rub off or wear off, and him throw 4 or 5 picks instead of 4 or 5 touchdowns, or and so. That could happen any day. That could happen Thursday night. You never know, but it's a gamble. It's worth the risk, I think, against the Jacksonville defense to roll those guys out there.
Bryce, you starting everyone?
Yeah, I feel like we haven't talked about Gardner Minshew enough. The man is top 10 right now in fantasy.
Yep.
So I think when you talk about him, most people were thinking the Jaguars are just unloading to tank for Lawrence, and I don't think that's the case at all. I think they're just trying to rebuild, and I think they're rebuilding around Gardner Minshew at this point. He's extremely efficient. He hasn't really had a bad game that I can remember. Last year might have had some not very great games, but he hadn't had a terrible game. He's smart with the football. He doesn't turn it over often. I like him. So he's one of the guys that I'm excited about, and I wouldn't even feel bad about plugging him in as my starting QB and redraft. You got to be happy you got him in dynasty leagues, even though that's not what this stream is for. But Gardner Minshew could very well be a top 10 QB by the end of the year. They're always going to be down probably because their defense is bad, similar to Bridgewater, where he's going to have to throw it all 4 quarters, and I wouldn't be surprised for him to have 40-plus attempts every week.
And he's spreading the ball around like crazy, right? So
yeah, he's accurate.
That's good for Gardner Minshew. It's not the greatest when you're trying to pluck a wide receiver to start. So, like, my personal decision this week is I'm trying to figure out, do I start Laviska Shenault or Keelan Cole? And I'm leaning Keelan Cole, especially if DJ Shark is out. But I don't know. And I probably won't know until I see the inactive reports come out. I ranked Minshew at 10 this week, and I feel like I'm low on him. And Rob, I think Fitzpatrick could throw 3 or 4 interceptions, but I also think he could throw 3 or 4 touchdowns to go along with it. He's just that kind of guy. So I think to Brad's point, it's going to be a really fun fantasy game. It might not be the greatest, if you like football defense, game. It might not be the greatest game to watch. I don't know if there's a kicker or defense you want to start in this game, but I'd probably shy away from that. I typically don't like the Thursday night games, but I think this early in the season, it's still pretty good, and there's not a whole lot of travel there, obviously. So what else we got going on, Brad? I'm running out of depressing news.
I'll say I'm seeing here in the news Devante Parker is not on the injury report heading into tomorrow night's game, so Devante Parker should be a start as well. Which muddies it up a little bit, but I still feel comfortable if you need, especially. So when I think about things like tomorrow night's game, and I'm thinking about all these injuries, if you need to press Preston Williams or Devante Parker in because of the running back injuries, you should feel comfortable doing that. I do see that Juju Smith-Schuster sat out of Wednesday's practice, but it could also just be the same. Well, he actually sat out last Wednesday as well, so it could just be the team doing it to keep him healthy. So be on the lookout for that.
Wednesdays are such a hit and miss day for the quote unquote stars. Hey.
Oh yeah, I see Jonnu Smith sat out, but he sat out the week. It appears that seems to be the norm for some of the big guys.
So. We didn't talk about Mike Gesicki. He's an absolute no-brainer must start tomorrow night. I can't remember the exact numbers that the Jags have given up in the first 2 weeks against the tight end, but it's monstrous. So fire him up.
Jonnu Smith did have a game last week, that's for sure. So definitely Gesicki's going to be.
I can't remember who they played in week 1. Tampa, right? Didn't O.J. Howard have a game in Tampa?
They faced the Colts,
it was Colts.
And the Colts didn't.
Never mind.
That doesn't count.
I guess it was all Jonnu that's tilting those numbers then.
Well, I mean, but Jacksonville's defense is still developing. They're young. Their linebackers are very athletic, but they tend to overrun things, so the tight end can work that middle of the field pretty well. So Gesicki should be perfectly fine and produce probably very similar to what he did last week, which was a really nice TE1 game. The thing that I would be interested in hearing from you guys about, a lot of people messaged me about like Odell Beckham, Jarvis Landry, the Cleveland Browns wide receiver situation. But just the Browns as general, as a fantasy kind of group of players. So we got wide receivers, running backs. Going into week 3, I mean, we're seeing that Baker's having basically an interception a week, so we know what we're going to get with him. But how do you guys feel about the Browns as a team? So Baker, Jarvis, Chubb, Hunt. Obviously we know they're all fantasy relevant, but how are you guys feeling about them now that we're a couple weeks in? And I'll start with you, Bryce. How do you feel about these guys, even Baker? What are you thinking about them?
So yeah, they're decked out from head to toe, right? They got 2 wide receivers, they got a tight end, 2 running backs. The only problem is the quarterback, right? He had a good game against Cincinnati, but that's not saying much. That team's terrible. Just being honest. I feel that I'm glad that I stayed away from almost that whole team. So the only players I really liked for the value that they were going and redraft was Jarvis Landry and Kareem Hunt. I thought Odell Beckham Jr. was going too high, based only on talent. That team just, they're trying to give him the ball, but he got one deep ball that salvaged his last performance. But I still think Baker likes going to Jarvis more than anybody on the team. And I like Kareem Hunt because I think that they're going to be losing a lot more games than people think. And he's obviously the more versatile back out of the backfield. So those are really the only 2 guys that I like. So if you drafted them, and you got good value for them, that's awesome. But overall, I'm glad I stayed away. Sully, what are your thoughts?
Oh, this team, I tell you, I think it's like Jekyll and Hyde. So, like this week, for instance, I don't really like them a whole lot because I just think they're going to run it down Washington's throat once they get up a little bit. And that's a Chubb / Kareem Hunt kind of game. The one thing that's really evident, even in Freddie Kitchens' disastrous offense last year, and it was really put on display, was it Monday night or last Thursday night that they played the Bengals? Last Thursday, maybe?
Yep.
When you give Baker Mayfield the opportunity out of play action, he's like one of the best quarterbacks in the league. When he straight drops back, he's one of the worst. So Kevin Stefanski and Alex Van Pelt clearly know this. And Stefanski coming out of Minnesota's play action heavy Kirk Cousins offense last year, I still think there's hope for Baker Mayfield at this point. With that being said, I don't own any of them. I haven't invested in him. I'm a Jarvis Landry truther through and through, but you can just see he's not the same guy on the field. I don't know if that's coming back from his hip or what. Like, I can't even remember the guy's name. The guy that where did they get him from? He caught a couple of passes on Thursday night. Crap.
Only like number 12.
Yeah, totally number 12. What's that guy's name?
Yeah, that's his name, number 12.
He looked like the best wide receiver on that team to me, route running wise and everything else. I think they plucked him off of Seattle's practice squad or something. Anyhow, they're a very, very difficult team to determine. And I think it's a game script sort of offense. Like, they're almost a better DFS offense. And I don't know a thing about DFS, so I probably shouldn't reference that. But they're a hard week in, week out offense to figure out, because one week it's probably going to be Hunt. The other week it's going to be Chubb. Like, I was really surprised that Chubb dominated that game. And I was like, man, they're not using Kareem Hunt at all. And then it was like they flicked a switch and Chubb took a break. And then Hunt came in and dominated the game. So other than Austin Hooper and the tight ends, who I think are somewhat fantasy irrelevant right now, I don't know what to do with that offense. But I tell you, if you own Chubb or Hunt, you should be trading them right now, because there's a freaking running back desperation mode going on up there. And someone's overpaying in a massive, massive way. Sorry for going on that crazy ramble there, Silvers. What do you think?
No, I think the guy you were looking for is Kadero Hodge.
Yeah, baby. That's the guy.
Formerly
Not much of
with
a redraft guy, but my
Los Angeles Rams. But he's played some decent snaps here through the first couple of weeks. So I was just reading that he played 57% of the offensive snaps against Cincinnati. And he played 55% of the snaps against the Ravens in week 1. So he's seen the field a decent amount. So there is some deep potential there, deep roster potential. As far as my thought on the Browns is, I love their running backs. Like, I like both Hunt and Chubb a lot. But to your point, you sell them now, you've got a chance to rake it in a little bit. The whole passing game I worry about. Like, I don't trust Baker. I think Austin Hooper was overrated because he had Matt Ryan throwing to him. I think we're seeing that live out through 2 weeks. To your point, Jarvis Landry just isn't looking the same yet. And Odell, I don't know. I mean, he's got all the talent in the world, but he can't put it together. Outside of those first couple of years, I mean, lately he just can't put it together, and so it's got me worried. Now they've got the chances to really blow up, and if things start clicking, they could be steals if you're able to get some of those guys cheap right now. But I don't trust Baker enough to believe that they're ever going to click it into place and start putting up the offensive numbers I feel like they should with the weapons they have.
Total side note, are the Buccaneers this year's versions of the Cleveland Browns?
Well, other than the fact that they might actually win enough games to make the playoffs.
Based on what?
Based on
the division
the fact that they've got good wide receivers. Right? Yeah, they beat the Panthers.
The division they're in.
I don't know yet.
Dumpster fire right now.
Yeah, we'll have to see. I feel better about the weapons on the Buccaneers than I do about the weapons on the Browns, and that's just because of who the quarterback is. Even though Tom Brady's at the end of his career, I think comparatively, wide receiver and running back is somewhat comparative. Running back, the advantage goes to the Browns, but wide receiver is comparable. I feel a lot better about and tight end, it's comparable-ish, and I feel better about the Buccaneers pass catchers for sure.
No doubt there. I agree.
Yeah.
There was another injury today. Well, that came to light today. Philadelphia, which has looked god-awful through 2 weeks, losing Jalen Reagor for at least until Thanksgiving due to a torn UCL in his thumb. Apparently that happened on Sunday. I didn't hear much about it until today when they put him on IR. So, but that team, they don't have a lot of pass catchers, so, I mean, nobody healthy. So that puts J.J. Arcega-Whiteside a little bit higher on the radar again, but he just does nothing. Deshaun Jackson hasn't been doing much of anything. And Carson Wentz looks completely lost at quarterback. I mean, I don't know what he's trying to do. You see him drop back and I'm not an expert or anything, but you see him drop back. It looks like he's out there stomping around like a sumo wrestler. He's so wide, and he's not standing up and throwing the football. He's like stretched way out, like he's trying to, I don't know, sidestep people constantly. He's got a wide base, so he just looks awful. And till he gets back in the quarterback room and figures it out, I don't know if anybody is worth owning in that receiving game, even with the Rager injury.
Is that the worst division in football, you think?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had an argument with my friend today. He's like, no, they're not. I'm like, they are. I'm sorry to tell you. Your best team might go. It's like the Cowboys might easily win that division going 8-8.
Well, let's put it this way. The Washington football team should be leading that division right now.
They should be, yeah.
Right? Like, there's no way the Cowboys should have won that football game, except the Falcons' special teams are allergic to the football. But
they're also allergic to large leads.
Yeah,
that's the Patriots.
That's true too. But yeah, are the Eagles getting any healthier on the offensive line? Like, they got Johnson back last week, didn't they?
Miles Sanders.
Like, because that's, to me, it all stems from that, right? Like, Carson Wentz is, like, let's face it, if you've been hitting or hurt as much as him, you probably got a little bit of shell shock going on. He's probably got PTSD back there. So he's got Miles Sanders back now. Boston Scott did nothing. J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, I don't think he has a target yet this year. I don't know what his snap count is. To your point earlier, Rob, Deshaun Jackson has been not nearly what we thought he was going to be. It's like the Dallas Goedert, Zach Ertz show, right? So, and other than that, I don't think that there's really much else in that offense. But that might be enough to win that division again this year, because their defense should be better. Like, they improved it, I thought. So, at least the secondary component of it.
Yeah, but I mean, they should have had the win this week. And I mean, I get what you're saying about being worried about getting hurt and stuff, but you have a wide open receiver in the back of the end. There's something wrong with the quarterback. He had a wide open receiver in the back of the end zone to basically take the lead late in the ball game, and he throws a pick, or maybe it was put the game away late in the ball game. He was wide of the. He wasn't even close to the wide receiver with his pass. Like,
yeah, I didn't see it.
It's awful, and I hate to say it. Like, I live 60 miles from Fargo, where he went to school. Like, I was all aboard Carson Wentz. I thought Carson Wentz was great last year, considering he had no wide receivers and everything. But right now, he just doesn't look like the same quarterback at all. And I don't know what the answer is. I put a lot of their offensive woes and a lot of that blame on him, because it looks like it's coming from him. If you can't get the ball to the wide receivers, it doesn't matter whether Deshaun Jackson is 22-year-old Deshaun Jackson or 32-year-old Deshaun Jackson, if the ball can't get to him.
Right.
So how much of it is, so you got to remember, we're at week 2 now. We've had no preseason. So in theory, you could have 3 to 4 games where guys are still trying to knock the rust off. I wonder how much of it is some of this, where we're seeing guys still trying to get their groove back. That's where I wrestle with some of this, because Carson Wentz, up until this year, has been perfectly fine. I mean, obviously injuries to him or his receivers have always been an issue, but he hasn't looked this out of sync with the team, with the offense. So I wonder with him, is he a guy that really does need a few weeks to get his sea legs back under him as they get the season going? And you know, with all these injuries at wide receivers, I mean, he needs somebody. I mean, John Hightower and J.J. Arcega-Whiteside could be their starting wide receivers. And right now, John Hightower would lead the 2 in receptions. Was he got 1?
I like Hightower.
I like them both. I have J.J. and John Hightower on rosters because I drafted them both and haven't traded either. You know, so I'm just saying that.
Well, you can't trade one. He has no value.
Oh yeah, you're not trading him right now. So that's kind of where I'm at. I'm like, okay, obviously they're going to have to lean on the run game to set up the pass, and then the tight ends are their top options right now. I get it, but in 3 weeks, are we still having the same conversation? Do you guys think?
I hope not. I mean, like I said before, I'm a Carson Wentz fan. I hope not. I hope it's fixed in 3 weeks. Whether or not that's attributable to the no preseason games or not, I don't know. But I hope there's a solution there because I like it when Philadelphia's got a good offense. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of us do. I mean, last year with all the injuries, they were fun to watch. Like, I enjoyed it because you never knew. They always somehow in games, they found a way. But yeah, I don't know if that's poor play is attributable to no games. Like, there may be a correlation between the injuries and no preseason games. I'm not sure how that all works out. I will say there's plenty of other quarterbacks in the league, though, right now who are playing just fine without having had those games.
Cam Newton.
Bryce, you want to talk about the Patriots, buddy?
Man, I could talk for hours about the Patriots, but I'm sure a lot of people just roll their eyes. They're good again. Great. No, but Cam does look great. I think, in redraft, for those people who drafted your Tom Brady's and your Drew Breeses hoping, oh, my quarterback's set. Hopefully, there's no way he's on the waiver wire still, but if you were able to snag Cam as your backup or even who were we talking about earlier? Oh, like Gardner Minshew as a backup. Those guys right now are showing out, and Cam looks like he did his MVP season so far. I mean, it's only 2 weeks in, so I wanted to see how he looked if he had to throw it a lot, and he looked great. So it's also our offensive line is giving him so much time to throw the ball, and I've said it hundreds of times. Our offensive line is very good. They're way better pass blockers than they are run blockers, and it definitely showed in that Seahawks game. I know the Seahawks don't have any notorious pass rushers, so it would be interesting to see against the Raiders, who actually do a good job at getting to the quarterback. So I think you're going to get another, and the Raiders are another team to talk about this year. They're showing out. They're a young team that maybe John Gruden's starting to put them together. I said that if he gets some years to build that team to the way he plays football, they could be dangerous. And right now they're showing to be pretty good. So there's some teams that a lot of people thought this year they wouldn't be very good, or they'd be 8-8 or worse. And right now they're looking to be like playoff teams that could possibly contend. So just interesting to see.
I think there is something to the no preseason, no Brad. I think that's an excellent point. And more to that is there was no real offseason program, right? So for teams, not so much Philadelphia, because I don't think they had much rotation or change in their staff. But, you look at teams like the Giants and the Panthers that are new head coaches and new entire coaching staffs and no offseason programs. It's got to be quite the adjustment. So I agree with you, Bryce, on the Raiders. I thought that was a really fun game on Monday night. I enjoyed it. Man, if Carr hit Ruggs when he was wide open screaming down the sidelines, that would have been fun too. But I think the Patriots handled the Raiders quite easily because you take Waller away from the middle of the field and their defense is still nowhere near there. The pass rush is nice, but you get through that, you're home free. So we'll see.
All right, so as we close out the show, we've got questions. Everybody's been doing a great job pumping them in here on YouTube, and I want to make sure we get some of them.
Yep.
Jacob asks, start 2 of these guys. Devontae Parker, Deontay Johnson, Odell Beckham, Cooper Kupp. Bryce, who you starting?
You said Devontae Parker, Cooper Kupp for sure. So who is the rest? Devontae Parker,
Deontay
OBJ.
Johnson, and OBJ.
Man, he's got some good problems to have here. Man, I think you got to go Devontae Parker. I think I'll go Devontae Parker and Cooper Kupp and feel pretty good about it. But it's in that situation, your bench players could easily outperform your starters. Those guys are all really close, except Cooper Kupp. I think he's a for sure start for me. Sully?
I don't love the matchup for the Rams and the Bills. So I'm a little on the fence there. My first initial run through my rankings, I would start OBJ and Devante Parker.
Yeah, that's where I was leaning, just because if you look at it right now, it looks like Kupp's probably going to get Trey White, and that guy shuts people down. I
don't think he'll be on Robert Woods?
See, I don't know. I mean, I guess it just depends on who you think their number one is. I think Kupp is their bigger play guy, where Woods doesn't have the speed that Kupp has. Although when I say that, I'm like, I don't know. It could be either.
I know I would cut because I didn't think Tre'Davious to be on him. But if I guess I'd have to do some more research. If I think Tre'Davious White's on him, then I'm probably steering clear of him. But
yeah, I was leaning OBJ and Parker just because Cleveland's got the Washington football team this week, and they should be able to get OBJ another. Even if it's 70 yards and a touchdown, OBJ still.
That's all he needs.
That's all.
Keep him happy.
Yeah. So, what about you, Silvers?
Okay, well, I'm going to go Devante Parker. We talked about that game earlier. Start the guys in that game. It should be a wild, fun game, we feel like. Mm-hmm. So I'm on board with that. With the Rams going against Buffalo, I see the tough matchups. I don't know if any one of those wide receivers is going to get matched up with White 100% of the game, just because of, and Brad, you were kind of alluding to it, they're kind of interchangeable wide receivers. And so I think it's going to have a lot to do with situation and who they think the play is geared toward. And Buffalo's going to be trying to guess on that a little bit. But I don't expect necessarily great games from any of them. OBJ, well, he should be able to beat those corners. The problem I see is Baker Mayfield's going to get hit a lot in that backfield, going to be on the run a lot. That's a good pass rush in Washington. So I don't really trust that. My second guy is Deontay Johnson. That Pittsburgh passing game looks really good right now. And they got a pretty solid matchup here going against the Texans. The Texans have been god-awful on all fronts on defense. So, to me, it looks like Parker and Johnson have the two best matchups. And so I'm going to roll with those two guys.
Yeah. My worry, and I thought about Deontay Johnson, my worry there was Houston's run defense has just been brutal. So if they get up and they're just running the ball, that it then makes Deontay Johnson, just as valuable as any of the other guys. So that was where I worried about it. But I really don't hate starting any two of these guys, because they all
agree.
You can build the case that any one of them could have a good week. But Devante Parker, obviously, Jacob, we are for sure starting. And then you've heard us all kind of lean to a different direction.
You got four good options there, my man.
We didn't help you all that much other than for sure Devante Parker. Jacob also asked Evan Ingram or Goddard this week. Bryce.
I think with the 49ers beat up team, not even just defense, the whole team being beat up, I'm going to go Evan Ingram.
Sully.
Wait.
Go ahead, Bryce. I'm still thinking, so keep talking.
Silvers, who do you think?
well, Goddard's got a good matchup. I think a pretty decent matchup with the Bengals defense. So I don't see that as wrong. I guess to me, if you want the safe play to me right now, it's going Goddard, which seems crazy. He's the tight end too, but he's been the more productive tight end, and we know he's got a good matchup. With San Francisco a little beat up, there's opportunity there for Evan Ingram to finally break out a little bit this year. He struggled these first 2 weeks. But also last year, when he and Daniel Jones really started clicking and connecting on a lot of plays, was once the wide receiver corps started to have some injuries and guys were missing time. I believe when Sterling Shepard went down that first game, he had like 9 receptions on 10 targets and 100 yards and a touchdown. I mean, it's just it was right up there in that range. So Evan Ingram has a chance, I think, to break out a little bit this week and maybe start the more positive path for the rest of the year. So to me, it's what do you feel more? Goddard's your safe play at tight end, and Ingram's your home run.
Yeah, for me, it's Evan Ingram, and it's not even close. And I look at the situation with Ingram in his rookie season. OBJ was hurt. I can't remember who the running. I don't know if Saquon was. He wouldn't have been there yet, but whoever was there was hurt, and it was just him. That was all that was left, and it's getting quite similar to that now. The Giants need a win in the worst possible way. I don't think they're going to get one, but I do think that Daniel Jones should be better. It should be a little bit more time in the pocket for him without those two key studs for the 49ers. So I'm firing up Evan Ingram. I think he's the better player, and I think he's the better start.
Okay. All right. So Khan asks, he's dealing with the Michael Thomas injury, so he's having to decide between starting Laviska Shenault or Preston Williams. So this is obviously a matchup we've talked about. Bryce, who are you starting between those two?
I think I'm going to go. It'd be interesting to see the extent of DJ Chark's injury, I guess, because if he's hurt, I want to go with the guy I think gets more volume, which would be Shenault. But I'm still going to go with Preston Williams. I liked how he played last year, and with Devontae Parker back, I think it takes a lot more pressure. Or Devontae Parker being taken off the injury report, it takes a lot more pressure off of Preston Williams. So I'll go with Preston Williams. Sully?
I'm going to go the opposite route. I'm going to go with Laviska. It seems like they're trying to get the ball in his hands. He gets some targets. He had some carries. So I think he's a safer play. He has a better floor than Preston Williams does. And it's a weird thing to say on a Thursday night, but if you think you need upside, so maybe you lost some of those key running backs and you really need to get some points out of your wide receivers, I would shoot Preston Williams in as the ceiling play. But personally, if it was me, I'll start Laviska. How about you, Robert?
Yeah, I think I'm going to go with Shenault too. He's been the better producer through 2 weeks. To your point, they're finding different ways to get him involved. Preston Williams has just been a little bit slow. It hasn't been the Preston Williams we saw before the ACL injury last year. And, historically, right, not everybody's Adrian Peterson and can come back after 8 months or whatever and perform at a NFL MVP caliber level. So he's not yet a year through that injury. So he's still probably warming up to it a little bit. And he just hasn't put up the numbers yet. Hasn't been as successful. So I'm going to roll with Shenault.
Yeah, I'd probably do that too. It's tough when you're looking at a guy who's, what is he, number 3, potentially 4 option when in the passing game. But they're feeding him some. He's not getting a ton of action, but he's being successful with what he's getting. So when I look at a guy who's probably the number 3 or 4 option as opposed to a guy who's clearly the number 2 option or 3 option in the passing game, I'm like, but Shenault's probably got the higher ceiling, so I'd go with him. Just we keep seeing him getting fed, so that's where I'm kind of like, I mean, it's kind of like Goddard Ingram, so.
And if it turns out into the shootout that we're kind of thinking might happen, as I think all 4 of us are kind of feeling that way about that game tomorrow night, both guys could end up being excellent plays very easily.
Yep, absolutely. So, okay, so Team Out of Nowhere asks, thoughts on Jeffrey Wilson as like a flex play this week? Because we obviously know Jerick McKinnon's the guy, and then Wilson's kind of the other guy. Bryce?
I don't like it. No, I think it's going to be Jerick McKinnon majority of the time. I think he even sees majority of the rushes. So I would wait a week. I mean, if you're real thin, I guess you could throw him in. I guess I'd have to see more context of your roster, but I don't like him at all as a flex play. Sully?
I think he's a top 36 running back this week because I don't think McKinnon's going to get enough carries to warrant much workload. And I think regardless of how much they're beat up, they're still going to be up in this game. So if anybody's going to close this one out, it's going to be him. I just think he gets the opportunities. And I think he had 5 or 6 goal line carries. I think it was 2 years ago, and he converted 4 of them. So he can score touchdowns, and touchdowns are such a difference maker that I think he has the ability to be inside the top 36. So to me, yeah, he's a flex play. Rob?
Yeah, I agree. He's a flex play and solely based on the goal line work. Jerick McKinnon's not going to be the guy pounding it between the guards at the goal line. So that's going to be Jeff Wilson. And he's been successful there, as you said. So I'd roll with him just with the hopes he's getting a touchdown. And I think there's a chance he gets 2 or 3 touchdowns, just the way that game's likely to shake out, even with San Francisco having all those injuries. It's very probable they're going to be working a few short fields.
Yeah, and that's the tough thing for me is like I want to lean towards Bryce because McKinnon's looked good. But
Mhm.
man, that with the way this team's going to have to run because of the injuries at all the other positions, I feel like Jeffrey Wilson. This is going to be the week where Jeffrey Wilson kicks people in the junk. And so in the Fish League, because I have no other running backs, I picked him up and I put him in my lineup because I just
Nice.
don't have enough guys. Like I'm like, dude, Kittle's hurt. I don't know if he's playing. I grabbed Jordan Reed because, well, he's the backup and he's, alive this week. But I have nothing to start. I've got a bunch of receivers, and I'm starting as many as I can. So yeah, so I went Jeffrey Wilson as well in this case, only because I actually physically did it in one place. But it was true desperation. Like I have no other options, and I was scouring the waiver wire looking for something. So I would say
I'll-
Bryce is right, but I did Jeffrey Wilson, so I can't say it. I can't
I'll
say
add
it.
really quickly, if Jeffrey Wilson does even remotely what I think he could do this week, is you are putting him on the market and selling him as fast as you possibly can after this week. Because this is it. He's turning into a pumpkin. Sell him when you can.
So this one's got to go directly to Bryce because this is his boy. Boston Anthony asks, is Gronk going to get more touches?
Well, I don't think he can get any less. So I would assume. I would assume. What is he didn't get? He didn't get any catches last week.
No.
Yeah, that it's interesting to watch that offense because obviously Brady is not comfortable. The offensive line is not very good. I think with the emergence of Leonard Fournette being in an offense that where defenses can't solely focus on him, he's going to be more productive and efficient, which is going to lead to more play action, which Brady does better at. So, and then Chris Godwin coming back is going to lead defenses to be focusing on Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, which leaves O.J. Howard and Gronk. At this point, though, in the season, I think I like O.J. Howard more than Gronk. But I do see Gronk getting more touches, but you can say goodbye to those years where he was tight end one. I don't think that's ever going to come back. Sully?
Yeah, I wrote about it and talked about all offseason. They didn't send him to temp. They didn't Tampa Bay didn't get him to block. Maybe they did.
Yeah.
So it's weird. I don't know what's happening. And I think to Brad's point earlier, this might be one of those teams that's suffering a little bit from no preseason football. I reserve the right to change my mind in like 3 or 4 weeks, but right now it doesn't look like Gronk's going to make it through the season to me. Mr. Silvers?
Yeah, well, I appreciate this guy's name asking the question. Boston Anthony must wanted to make sure it wasn't San Francisco Anthony on the Roto Heat team there asking the question here. So, but I think he's going to get a few more touches here for sure. I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, he's had 3 targets week 1, 1 target week 2. I'd imagine he's going to settle right in that 4.5 targets a game range as the season progresses. But I don't think he's anything special to your guys' points at this point in his career.
Okay, so Khan asks, which is more likely, Adam Gase getting fired or Lev Bell getting traded? Bryce.
What a great question.
I know, right? This is a fun one.
Really good
question. The best question ever, I think.
Adam Gase getting fired, I think, is more likely. I mean, Le'Veon's probably, he's definitely overpaid. He hasn't produced to what people thought he was going to do. But then again, he's also in a terrible situation. I think he's better than people give him credit for. I think he benefited. Nobody can deny he benefited heavily from the system and the offensive line that it was in Pittsburgh. But I don't think his talent. He's better than what it looks like than he is on the Jets. He needs to be kind of put in that on an average team, and he's going to put up. Again, good numbers, but Adam Gase. I mean, how many years can you just not be good on any team before you're just never a head coach again? Sully, what about you? What do you think?
I want the answer to be Adam Gase, and I want the answer to be yesterday. But I think the reality is that that's one of the worst ownership groups in the NFL. I don't think they care too much. And the coach doesn't seem to like the running back. So when he comes off of IR with the long list of running back carnage in the league, I could see Le'Veon Bell leaving town. So I'll go that route. even though I want it to be Adam Gase is fired.
Silver.
Yeah. For
Silver?
me, I have had, a few long, stressful weeks, but I will say the most humorous moment I found in the last couple of weeks was seeing that the Jets CEO called Adam Gase a brilliant offensive mind last Wednesday. Oh, I was rolling on the floor. I mean, come on. Are we kidding at this point? He's
Is
terrible.
that because he finally got Kalen Balaj or what?
It must have been. I don't know. But I don't get it. And if that's the crap you're going to spew out of your front office about your coach, then there's no question in my mind it's more likely Le'Veon Bell gets traded. If they think Adam Gase is brilliant, considering his offenses have been no better than 28th at any point. Who's the guy? Mike Greeny, Jets fan. I don't know if you guys watched his
ESPN
going
again?
off about that. I mean, I wish I could quote him word for word. It was spot on. Adam Gase is terrible, but it's going to be Lev Bell first, I think.
Yep. Unfortunately, that's probably the case, but Adam Gase deserves to be hanging out with Patricia in the unemployment line. Seb asks, should I try to trade James Conner before he gets injured again? Bryce.
No, I like James Conner. I mean, he hasn't proved to be durable, but like I said, that the system that Le'Veon Bell and the offensive line that Le'Veon Bell was super productive under with the Steelers, it really hasn't changed that much. The running backs always thrive in that offense. I was a little worried after week 1 that Benny Snell would earn his way to getting more touches, but seemed like in week 2 James Conner was still the man, and he produced at a high. He produced well, but I mean, I'm always open to trade. I don't believe in players being off limits, because I'm willing to sell anything for the right price. So hopefully, you should always have that same mindset as well. But I wouldn't go out seeking anything or reaching for a guy like in giving away James Conner. What about you, Sully?
My answer would be to agree with you, Bryce, and say no. And the only reason I might say yes is because, again, the desperation level of what's going on in a lot of leagues. So if there's an opportunity, like if Connor is your number 2 or even your 1A back, because you could have got him late this year. If you had I don't know, even a comparable David Johnson, James Conner sort of backfield, maybe you do because you can cash in somewhere else. But no, injuries don't really scare me off. Like that position, every single one of them and every carry that they have could be their last. Like it's volatile. And I kind of got into a little bit of an argument with sort of my inner circle, I like to call them, is that I said James Conner was a must start last week. And people are like, how could you say that? And it's just because if James Conner practices all week and he's healthy, he's going to get the ball and he's going to get the bulk of the carries. And in that offense, he's a must start. So, and he proved it. So the easy answer is no, but it's situational based. Rob?
Yeah, it's an answer I don't like giving, but I agree with you. And that's just because I'm not a huge James Conner fan. I'd like to have no shares of him. In fact, I'm pretty sure I have no shares of him. I've never been a fan. I know he kind of blew up there for a few weeks and was hot blew up basically that whole first year when Lev Bell sat out. But I just felt like it was fool's gold. He's proven to be effective. I don't know what it is. I just don't like him. So I would trade him if I had him. But I would not trade him for nothing. I would take advantage of that current situation that's there, like you said, with the depleted running back field and make sure I got something for him. But I don't have that luxury.
Well, the tough thing is that, with the injuries that we've seen, like this guy could very well be an RB1 the rest of the season if he's healthy. And it's like, you're going to have to get such a return for it that I just don't know that you're going to be able to trade him. Like, if I'm trading him, I need a running back plus an upgrade at whatever position I'm weakest in. Like, I would just hold on to him because he's going to do you more good on your roster than trying to argue with owners about the necessity for him. Like, we had this conversation in one of the Discord channels. One of the owners, not running back wise, but one of the owners in a Superflex league has like 4 or 5 quarterbacks, and a guy's trying to get one off of him. And the one that he was trying to sell was Phillip Rivers, and the guy was like, well, I'll only give you a 2. I was like, well, if this guy's desperate, he's going to pay a premium. Like, I want more than. Same thing goes with Connor. Guys are going to be desperate right now because running backs are dropping like flies. So I'm not selling for cheap. So he's probably just going to stay on my roster. So if you can trade him, sure, but I doubt you're going to get the return on him that you probably deserve.
I don't think anybody likes Phillip Rivers more than I do, but if somebody would give me a second rounder for him, I'd be slamming that accept button so fast.
Yeah, but
See ya.
If you're in dire need of a quarterback, I'm getting a little extra. Like I'm not going to just give him up.
That's fantasy karma though. That stuff comes back to get you. Take the fair trade and move forward.
Yeah. Karma can.
Pretty sure I got some notifications of that league we're playing in about some trade activity that I got to check out later. So
there may have been a text in the midst of this show where a owner that is on the stream with you said, "Hey, I need some running back help."
Yeah,
I'm trotting out
I may
Kamara.
have seen that. He probably shouldn't have traded that other guy, Derrick Henry, then.
Well, but I got Alvin Kamara out of that deal. Like that's the reason I traded Derrick Henry, because I wanted Alvin Kamara. Just so happens that the other guys that I picked up were Marlon Mack, Jordan Howard, Rojo. I was like, well, maybe I can figure out a way to throw something in there. No, that didn't work. They all stink.
They can't all be home runs.
No, they can't. So King Kearns asks, is Edelman for Shark and A.J. Brown a good trade? He's giving up Edelman. That's instant accept for me.
Yeah.
I don't really have anything to say. If the owner of Shark and Brown is willing to give you them for Edelman, I know Edelman's producing nicely and will this year, I'd still do it. Bryce?
Yeah, even though I love Julian Edelman, I think he's one of the most underrated receivers of all time. I can't fathom making.
I've never heard of him.
Yeah, I can't fathom making that trade, like giving away DJ Shark, and I could maybe fathom giving one of them away in the sense of if you're really wanting to compete for that year. It looks like Edelman is Cam's go-to guy right now, but even then, I still wouldn't do it. I gotta change my mindset. In redraft, it only matters for that 1 year, so I probably would do it just straight up in redraft for just one of them, but both of them combined, there's no way. So, Sully, what about you?
Yeah, regardless of format or whatever, I think it's an easy accept because, you and I have talked 1,000 times about how much we think New England's going to run. Julian Edelman's not going to have a game like he had last Sunday night again. In fact, that's the best game of his career yardage-wise. So, those are two nice pieces for one there. That's pretty straightforward for me. What do you think, Mr. Silvers?
Well, to answer the question of if it's a good trade, it's an awful trade for all the reasons you guys said. And if I was the one trading away Julian Edelman, I'd probably be going by the doctor tomorrow to get a splint put on my thumb because I'd fractured it smashing the accept button so hard. You guys have pretty much said it all. If you're trading away Edelman,
do it.
Don't even think about it. Do it.
Accept. All right, so Seb asks, is Jonnu Smith able to finish as a top 5 tight end this year? Bryce?
100%, yeah. I think before you joined us, Brad, when we were talking about, I don't know if we were talking about tight ends or players that have the potential to break out, but I remember discussing Jonnu Smith at one point, and I have a buddy that follows the Titans very closely, and he talked to me for an hour about Jonnu Smith, and I went and did my research on him, and he is an athlete, and I watch him play, and I love the way he plays, and Tannehill loves him, so easily he could finish top 5. Sully?
I think the answer, could he? Yes. Will he? I don't think so. So I was just sort of, as you were talking, thinking, so Kelsey, depends on how long Kittle's out, but he's probably back in time to be still a top 5. I think Andrews still has to stay in there. And the way Fant and Gesicki are playing, I think they're in there. Ertz is still around. I think he's a top 10 tight end for sure. It doesn't take a lot of tight end, though. So if he has a couple more games like he had last week, yeah. He definitely has the skill set to do it. I think he's a top 12 guy. I think I had him inside my top 12 to start the year. I really like him, but I don't think he's a top 5 guy, but he certainly has the potential for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Silvers?
Yeah, I agree with everything you guys have said. The potential's there. Probably definitely going to be a top 10 guy, I think. A guy I was very happy to be getting in that mid-teen range in these drafts because we talked about it a lot in the offseason. seemed like such a deep position where there were guys who had top 10, even top 5 potential all the way down late into drafts. So, and he's the one right now from that lower group stepping up.
Yep. Our main man, Jaws, the man, the myth, the Jaws, asks, he's trying to decide what to do with Josh Gordon and Raquel Armstead. It looks like he needs to drop somebody from his IR. And he asks, what's the holdup with Josh Gordon and kind of who's the guy that you're keeping on your IR? Raquel Armstead or Josh Gordon? Bryce.
Yeah, I almost forgot about Josh Gordon. Yeah, and Armstead has almost become irrelevant at the emergence of James Robinson. So I think, I wouldn't feel bad about dropping either one of them. But I guess I would probably drop Armstead. Sully?
Oh, I don't know. I can see why the question's asked, because there's a role for Josh Gordon if he can get reinstated and come back. I don't know if the same type of role is there for Armstead. So, Jaws, thanks for always being here, first and foremost. And second of all, I think I'm going to drop Armstead there. Mr. Silvers.
All right, before I answer the question, I got to ask another question, and that is,
how it works,
Bryce, were you even walking the last time Josh Gordon played a full season?
Yes, I was walking. It's been a while, though. It's been a while.
Actually, what year did he last play a full season?
2012.
2012?
2012, yeah.
Yeah.
I've been in high school. I've been a sophomore in high school.
Oh, good Lord. Move on.
Yeah, all right. Well, I agree with Sully. I think there's higher potential for Gordon as it stands right now, unless something changes in Jacksonville, like a James Robinson injury. I don't think Armstead's taking that job right now.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I mean, because I soured on Gordon and was done with him years ago, I'd say Gordon, just because if Armstead comes back and there's an injury, then he gets a chance. Gordon, I think he's still with Seattle. I think they've got his rights, or he may even be signed there. Who's he going to take reps from? DK Metcalf's better than him, and Tyler Lockett's faster than him, and he doesn't play tight end. So I don't, it's like, where are they going to put him, and where's he going to go? So I would probably go Armstead, just because, injuries are obviously very apparent right now, and maybe he gets a chance, but quite frankly,
Doesn't he take that David Moore, Freddie Swain, whatever, third wide receiver rotating role?
Yeah, but aren't those guys primarily moved around in the slot? I don't know that Gordon plays much in the slot. Isn't he an outside guy?
I thought Lockett moved around in the slot. I'm not positive, to be honest.
I would have to look at deeper into it, but I don't know. And that's the tough thing, is I just, with the way this team runs, I don't know if there'd be enough shares for it to matter. Like I said, I would be okay if you drop both of them. I don't think.
I don't disagree with that either.
Right.
Yeah. That wasn't the question, though.
I know.
Well, and just to that point about that Seattle offense, though, that Moore Swain role has been very valuable through 2 weeks, because they are, as they say, letting Russ cook out there in Seattle. I mean, I think combined those two guys have 34 fantasy points through 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. So if Josh Gordon was to step in and take over that whole role, or 80% of that role himself, it could be very valuable.
Good.
I'm not sure he's better than either one, though.
No, I'm not either at this point, when you haven't played in 8 years hardly.
Right. All right, so Kelly04 asks, should I trade Lamar for DK Metcalf and Miles Sanders? And then also, should I trade CEH for Diggs? Bryce. So it's 2 separate trade offers.
Okay, so Lamar for DK and who?
Miles Sanders.
I think that just depends on your team structure. So if I kind of talked about earlier, if you took if you got Lamar early, obviously in a redraft, and then you might have got a guy like Cam Newton roll late, or just somebody else that produces, and you're weak at wide receiver and running back, absolutely I would do that trade. And then what was the second trade? CEH for Diggs. Man, Stephon Diggs is balling out like I thought he would, but I'm still gonna hold. I'm gonna keep Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Again, it's very dependent on structure of a team, but running backs right now are needed so heavily that I think you could get more for Clyde Edwards-Helaire than just Stephon Diggs. So I would definitely hold on to Clyde, but I would still be looking to maybe cash in on his value to somebody else if you're weaker in other spots. Sully?
Lamar for who, Brad? Sorry?
DK and Miles Sanders.
Assuming it's one QB in a heartbeat.
Probably.
Right.
And
CH for Diggs.
CH for Diggs. No, I don't think I would. And I think to your point earlier, Brad, that with the injuries that we've seen, if James Conner potentially is a top 12 running back, I certainly think that CH could eventually become that as well, just because he's going to get better, and he's showed him a little bit more in the passing game this past week. Diggs is, to quote my man Bryce, balling out so far, but it's been 2 weeks, and one of the games was against the Dolphins, so I'm going to pump the brakes a little bit there. And Josh Allen's not going to average 350 yards passing every week, so I'm going to hold on to my running back.
Yeah, my answers are the same. I mean, reasons are very similar. So I'd trade Lamar and would not trade CH.
Yep, same here. Ryan says, what should I do? I have both Adams, I'm assuming Devante Adams, and Deontay Johnson on my team with Will Fuller, James Robinson, and Mike Davis on my bench. How should I approach this week with questionable Adams and Johnson? So basically it's how do you handle starting Devante Adams and Deontay Johnson with them both on injury reports? He's got Fuller, James Robinson, and Mike Davis on his bench. Would you bring any of those guys in for Adams or Deontay Johnson, or are you just leaving your roster as is, Bryce?
I'm leaving it as is, 100%. Sully?
Yeah, I think so. And just keep your eye on the injury report. It is Wednesday. People overreact, and not saying this individual's overreacting, but fantasy managers and coaches and players, everyone overreact early in the week. If they're not practicing by Friday, then I'm going to start to worry. Yeah. Mr. Silvers?
I'll start James Robinson tomorrow, and with the plan that if Adams is going, regardless of what's going on with Deontay Johnson, I'm starting Adams. If Adams is down, though, and Deontay Johnson goes, that's going to really depend on how his practice reports go, because he's dealing with a toe, and that can be pretty bothersome for wide receiver. Well, for anybody really. You're running, you're planting on that toe. So he's the bigger question mark to me, whether he'll be in the lineup at all this week for me. So I'd definitely start James Robinson tomorrow, and hopefully have Adams ready to go on Sunday.
None of those guys play Sunday night or Monday, do they?
No, I don't think so.
Sunday night.
There you go. That'd be my only other concern.
Adams does. Adams plays Sunday night.
Yeah, Packers and
Saints, right?
Saints, and then
that adds a little wrinkle.
Who's Monday night? Chiefs and Ravens.
Yeah.
The good night games.
Oh,
wow,
fun.
Good. All right, so Navraj says, I just traded Devin Singletary for Cam. Did I do good?
Yeah. Well, if you're needy at quarterback, yeah, I think so. Sully?
I think you did okay. I think I lean towards, that's a good trade. I don't really like it in that format of one quarterback, of trading a running back for a quarterback, just because the running back is so needy. But I think in this situation, that's a good trade.
Yeah, I think you traded a flex player for a top 12 quarterback. So I'm for that all the way.
Thumbs up. All right, so Miles asked, should I trade Juju for Todd Gurley? Bryce?
You have Juju? No, I would not. No, I think you could get more out of Juju. I'm trying to think of who you could get. I'm assuming you're hurt of all the running backs that got hurt, so I'd have to do a little bit more looking around and research, but I think you could do better than Todd Gurley for Juju Smith-Schuster. What about you, Sully?
Yeah, I watched a bunch of that game last week after I shut the Vikings game off in the second quarter. I watched a lot of the Falcons and the Cowboys, and Gurley looks, in all honesty, like their third best back. I don't want anything to do with him right now, and I'm certainly not going to trade a player like Juju for him. Rob?
Yeah, not making that trade.
Nope, me neither. All right, so Tenton Magic says, I lost Barkley and Mostert, so I'm thin at running back. Right now he's got Antonio Gibson and Josh Kelly as his 1 and 2. Should I trade OBJ for Gaskin and Darrell Henderson? Bryce?
No, I wouldn't. I would not. I know you're thin. Same reason for the last trade. I think you could do better for a talent like OBJ. Sully?
I think you have an asset in Joshua Kelly that is better than most people think that he is, and his role continues to grow week over week. That's my man Brad's boy, so we're going to keep going with that. Not crazy about Gibson, but I think there's some upside there as well. And yeah, I think I get it. Those are two big pieces to lose. Keep in mind, Mostert's injury is not supposed to be overly serious, so you're getting him back. Barkley's gone. But don't panic too much. Even if you lost both weeks, you're only 0-2. You can come back from that. Resist the urge. Rob?
Yeah, I don't think I'm making that trade either. And I'll just say, Josh Kelly, I mean, he got 23 carries this week against the Chiefs. I mean, he the opportunity's there. I don't think he's going to hit 23 carries very often, but they're going to keep rolling him out.
And he plays the Panthers this week. Cha-ching.
Oh, yeah. All right, so last question. Taki T says, Singletary versus the Rams or Ingram versus the Chiefs in a full PPR. Bryce.
That's a little bit harder one. I still like, I thought Mark Ingram would do well this last week, and he did. He found the end zone. I think he's still their go-to guy for now. So I'm going to go with Mark Ingram. Sully?
I agree. Rob?
Yeah, Brad, why don't you answer that first? Give me a second.
Yeah,
here.
I'm definitely going Ingram just because I don't. Singletary I like, but the Rams' defense is better than people think it is. It's not a pushover. Singletary will have his work out for him. The Chiefs' defense isn't bad, but it's going to be a shootout. Like, this thing's going to be a sexy fantasy game. And I think Ingram gets to the end zone at least once, and touchdowns are king for me. So give me Ingram in that case. Hopefully that gave you enough time to figure out your thoughts, Mr. Silvers.
Yeah, I'm going the opposite way. I'm going Devin Singletary. So I was trying to pull up the stats here, and so Mark Ingram has played just 48% of the Ravens snaps.
Yeah,
I mean that is a shared backfield all the way. And Devin Singletary, while he's splitting with Zach Moss, he's been the more effective player. He's outperformed Mark Ingram through 2 weeks. I think he continues with that and outperforms him again this week.
Well, if you want to use numbers, fine.
Sorry.
Ridiculous.
Crazy.
Well said, my friends. Well said. All right. Well, thank you guys for hanging out with us tonight. It's been fun. There's a lot going on in the league, and we had a lot to unpack. So appreciate you guys hanging out with us, shooting us some great questions. Again, don't forget, we've got our Start Sit video over here on YouTube. Post your Start Sit questions for the weekend there. You'll get them answered. Typically, I get that video out sometime on Friday afternoon. So get them out, get them up there. Thank you guys for hanging out with us, and we will talk to you again.